Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, obviously we're all very excited about the proposal, and we're refining elements of it. But I have to say that I concur with the Vice Mayor on the 3 bedrooms. And fortunately, when I lived in a 2-bedroom, I had 2 sons, and our neighbors had twin girls. So we could stay in those units until our kids got so big that it drove us crazy. But nevertheless, there was a period where we could live in 2 bedrooms. And if we are a city of families and we're losing families, it seems that the priority should be 3 bedrooms. And I understand the legalities of zoning fairly well, but it seems to me that when you lay out conditions for doubling, giving a 30% premium, you could say that the 15% private, one of the conditions is that there be 3 bedrooms. It's a condition. You're requiring, 20%. You're requiring 20% subsidized housing, but you're allowed to build 0.3 times the FAR. So it could be one of the conditions that to get that extra bonus, you need to build 3-bedroom units. I see no reason why that is any different than any other special permit conditions we put on. It's more specific, I grant you that, and maybe it's only 3 bedrooms for the subsidized units percentage. But that's what we're after. I think creative zoning and special permitting can incorporate that, even if nobody else has thought of it yet. It just seems to me a direct connection of public benefit, especially if it's square footage as what was presented earlier. It's the same square footage, and it's going directly to subsidized units. Also, and I was very pleased to hear Michael say this, that maybe larger units, family units at the ground floor, maybe that is something we ask for because it could have direct entries. I'm a big advocate of families having their own entry or shared entry, townhouse version. And it also, if you think about it, when you're transitioning with an existing neighborhood, neighbors would rather see multiple townhouse entries at the ground floor across from their houses than one entry in a completely dead wall facing the neighborhood. So it's a win-win from that perspective, and I would say that's where the 3 bedrooms should be, and most families, not all, would prefer to have ground floor access, especially with little kids. When the mentioning of 20%, which I totally agree with, but perhaps if there's an upzoning, we ask for additional. So I don't know where that would apply, where most upzonings have already happened. This would not apply, I assume, to the MXD nor MIT. I wish it would. Yeah, but only Volpe, where we're going to ask for a community, not just a building, which includes open space and other things. Now, if this could be based on a permit, which one of the public speakers said, I think it was Elaine, then I would say absolutely. If the building permits, individual building permits haven't come in, it's fair game. But if you think about what's been rezoned over the years, all the biggies are done except for Volpe that I can think of. I could be wrong, but I think that's the case.
As of right now, that's what we see, but I would say that 10 years ago, we would not have anticipated the upzoning requests in Kendall Square, even so.
Oh, sure you would have. Think of the landowners.
So,
Central period of time.
Well, there is a proposal for Central Square already being worked on, and there is an increase in the FAR being proposed, but it's moderate, not major. And I would say it'd be more of a penalty there than at MIT and MXD. I then come to the grandfather issue. You know, if zoning is done, and it's usually upzonings in recent years, there's immediate benefit. Now, I understand if somebody's working on a proposal and they've come to community development and the trust, maybe you can say these are in the works. But there are going to be many, many more in the works in the next few months, especially if the date of implementation is December 31st or January 15th. They'll come out of, you'd be amazed how many will come out. And so I just think we have to, as indicated by one of the public speakers, we have to really be definitive. If it's something in the works and the city knows about it by a certain date, and it's not just made up the week before, fine, but that's what zoning is. And I'm all for respecting people, but some people make a fortune with upzoning of a piece of land after they've bought it by upzoning it. This is zoning. Whatever the law says we need to do, that should be it. And if we want to make qualifications, if someone's come in and spoken to the city and there's a concrete plan, all right, then maybe that's the case. But I wouldn't leave it open too long.
To you, Madam Mayor, I think our hope would be that it does not hinge upon having had a conversation with CDD or having a plan in the works. It would really hinge upon who has a special permit by the particular date.
Now, that's wonderful. That's what I was seeing here. It didn't specify that. And then the opposition document had a much longer time frame, and I just wanted to make sure I totally agree with that. Thank you for saying that. As far as lowering the threshold, if the typical is 8 units, and I sense that's what it is, it should be 8 units. We're atypical, but the unit count shouldn't be atypical, the minimum unit count. It should be straightforward. As far as counting micro units and studios, I'll leave that up to the experts, but honestly, I don't know anybody who would prefer living in a studio in a micro unit unless they're a single person, and maybe that's the exception. And a few of the things that were mentioned on the developer's suggested lists about tax incentives for inclusionary units. I, for one, am not against that, especially if it promotes more units. And that might follow in the more unit. And I know the city's hesitant, and maybe we can't even do this, but it seems to me that's just an ongoing incentive that we should consider. Changing TDR requirements and allowances specifically in Kendall, which means moving housing, I assume, from Volpe, MIT, and MXD. I'd be totally against that, and I know planning feels that way. As far as competition with labs, you know, I can make an argument that we could use more office space. Labs do not belong anywhere near residences. And we have so much land where labs are allowed in special districts or PUDs, North Point, most of the Osborne Triangle as of right. Why do we need it in business districts that front on residential districts? So it seems to me that somehow we have to get rid of this lab threat that really destroys adjacent houses. And we know it. So I'm really tired of seeing that being a threat. And that's all I have to say. by the way, I'm excited by this, but these are things that I think can be refined that make it stronger. And I just think everybody in the city says we need housing, and yet it's too balanced with office and labs that the priority should be zoning, not just FAR, but the reality how decisions are being made should favor housing. Nobody's against housing. Other uses, maybe so. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carlone. Councillor Devereaux, and then Councillor Matt.